You're about to enjoy a Cloudcast original. Local stories, local storytellers, local brands.
Have you ever felt that you as a woman may not appear to measure up when you see incredible women in strong roles? You may be surprised when hearing from women in these positions and how we all share many of the same challenges. Thank you for joining us for the CEO Leading In podcast with Rebecca Jones as we share the journeys of women.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Jones, your host of CEO. We are on an exploration together to discover more about personal journeys of incredible women in both career and life. We all have paths to share that sometimes take incredible turns, deep resilience, and courage to navigate. My hopes are that the challenges shared here encourage women to take leaps of faith and growth when a journey feels too difficult or unachievable. There is great strength deep within each one of us. These stories are meant to share the ways strong women have taken their dreams to strive and thrive to new heights despite their sometimes rocky paths and found a way to lead in. Today we are with Jenny Windle from JPW Communications. How are you today, Jenny?
I'm great, Rebecca. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So I would like for you to tell us a little bit about JPW Communications and how you got there.
Sure. So the journey of JPW started in 2015 officially, but I must say it was in my mind for quite a bit of time before that. In 2015, I left my comfortable government job that I had held for several years. I'd been in the government sector for 20 plus years. And without a client to my name, I started JPW Communications. And I always say I started it with a dream and a prayer. My idea was to create an agency that specialized in government communications, working for cities and counties, special districts, those type of agencies, and build a team that really understood government as consultants so that we could come in and not just understand government, because as you know, there's quite a bit of nuances with government work, and oftentimes there's an alphabet soup language that we say is spoken in government. And we wanted to create a team that could understand that, but then provide what we called mind-blowing creative work around the communications space. And so in 2015, as I said, left my day job, started JPW out of my spare bedroom, and just started making phone calls to people that I thought might be interested in, at that time, just my services, because it was just me in the beginning. And I'm proud to say that I really feel that this concept has struck a chord. We are going on our 6th year of business. We have a team of 18. We are announcing this week our expansion into the Pacific Northwest region and the Rocky Mountain region, which we're really excited about. And we're doing really exceptional work for government agencies across, right now, the state and moving beyond that, as I just mentioned. And it's so rewarding to see that progression. A lot of hard work behind those 6 years, but here we are today, really just trying to connect people with their communities. That's at the end of the day what we do at JPW.
Well, my first thing I wanted to say was, does anyone really know about government?
Well, the team at JPW does.
Yeah, it is definitely a different scene altogether from regular communications and messaging and all of that, because it is different. And I always used to say, being that I'm a governmental employee, I always used to say, just because we're the government doesn't mean that we can't do things well. And, customer service is really important to me personally. And I remember when I first brought up customer service, I literally got scoffed at. But you have never been that way. You really, I think you realize and appreciate good service, and also painting pictures of all the good things that are that are happening in cities and special districts and counties and all of that. So tell me, what is one of the funnest things that you really love about your job? I know there's a lot, but just one thing that you really appreciate.
There's so many. One of the things that I'm focused on right now is our team and building culture within our organization, which has had its added challenges this past year plus because we've all been remote. In fact, I have new employees on my team that I've never met in person, if you can believe it.
Wow.
It's wild. And so one of the coolest things I get to do is share my passion for government service and share my passion for doing things above and beyond what's expected of us, and then seeing these new team members really embracing that and then carrying that out for their clients. And when we do that, at the end of the day, we're really impacting people's lives. And so I try and tell my team, it's not just about writing the best news release or putting together the best strategic plan. It's about transforming communities. And that's you, me, our family members, our friends, people that are less fortunate in the community. And I try and impart with them that that's the most important work that we could do. So it's not about running a big PR agency. And I always say we're not the glitz and the glamour that people think of when we think about PR agencies. In fact, I got a text from 3 of our team members today that are up in Sacramento at a trash site. They're doing some anti-littering work. And that is not glamorous, but it's certainly important. And so I think what really fires me up is seeing, especially our younger employees that are coming in to their first job, getting behind that passion, getting behind that purpose, embracing it, and helping us all level up at the agency, whether we've been doing it 20 years or if it's our first year doing it. And that's really exciting.
Well, I think having different voices and perspectives at the table is really important. I used to always say my favorite part of my job is meeting new people and going out, people that you would normally never even speak to just because they're not in your everyday kind of life. But hearing their perspective, because I think government is about serving people and not ever forgetting that. And so also, how can you improve their quality of life? And trash, it's important. I used to say one of my favorite things about my city was that there was one person that drove around all day long picking up trash.
Yeah.
And when I would see that person, I would wave at them. And I know they were always thinking, who is that gal? Yeah, it's me. It's me thanking you because I appreciate what you're doing. Because a community is not everyone doing one job. It's everyone doing something different. So I would argue that just because you are not doing, maybe communications about glitzy, beautiful vacations and all of that, you're doing the work to talk about what's improving people's quality of life and what they're dealing with every single day. So what, this is kind of going off script here. Well, sort of, what brought you here? Share something about your childhood that maybe people don't know about you. And then I'm going to follow up with a word that describes you. But anyway, so tell me about you as a child, a fun story that people would never know about you.
So, something somebody doesn't know about me. It's funny. Now I'm going to age myself a little bit, but back in the day when I was a kid, I really had no interest in domestic things. So I did have one of those little kitchens set up in my bedroom, and I could care less about it. My poor father stayed up late one Christmas and built it for me, and I just didn't want anything to do with it. What I wanted to do was get my grandfather's 10 key from when he used to work at Bank of America and pound on that thing and fill out those, from the bank, when you would go to the bank and you'd fill out a deposit slip. My mom used to gather some of those up for me and bring them home, and I kept them in a shoebox, and I would set up an office in my room. That really fired me up. That was my favorite thing to do. So, it's funny that some of these things are still instilled in us very early on. And that was a love, I think, of business that I had
and
very
service.
Early on, and service in my life that really came to fruition as I got into my career. So that's a little funny story. That poor kitchen never saw any action. My father, he worked at a lumber yard when we were young, and they upgraded their computers at some point. And so he bought from the yard their old cash register and brought it to me one Christmas. This was the Christmas after the kitchen. He realized that was not my jam. And so he brought that home one year for Christmas. And I had a lot of fun with that too. So
I think
definitely in commerce.
I think girls love the little cash register thing. My daughter had to have a cash register. I had to buy one at I forget, it was like, the Office Depot or whatever, and she had to have that because, and you know what? That's a cool thing.
Yeah, I really liked
to
to work.
Yeah.
I was really into work from a young age. I started working at 14. I got a work permit in the state of Oregon on the books so that I could go to work. And it was just something that really fired me up. And
what was
made
your
me
first
excited.
job?
I worked at my dad's company. So he went on to work for a hardware company, and I interned with him over the summer. And that was my very first job.
And interacting with people and finding out what their needs are.
Yes, in a very
All that sort of
male-dominated world. So that was interesting for a 14-year-old.
You were making your mark at a young age. That's awesome. So what's one word that describes you, do you think?
Goodness. I would probably say audacious. The Latin form of that is bold, means bold. And I think that really describes me because for good or bad, I've always just been really bold. And whether, starting my own business with no prospects in sight or moving to California without knowing a single soul, those moves have proven really successful for me, and they've taken some audacity to do them. And I don't think that that's something I think about, that I'm audacious, but I look back on my life and I see some of those moves that I made, that term seems to fit.
A lot of discussions that I have with women is that we have a lot of fear. And those things that you've done have really broken through fear, I think, because it is hard to go somewhere where you don't know anyone. You don't have that support system. And I think that's a lot of what we rely on as just people in general, of having that support system. So for you to go out courageously, might I add, going to a new place, you don't know anyone, and then saying, okay, well, I'm just going to start, I'm going to start a new job, and I'm not going to have any employees or prospects. It actually reminds me of when my ex and I started our first our business. And I remember him saying, yeah, we're going to start our own business. You're going to work the computer. And I went, wait a minute, I don't even know how to work a computer. And the first time I turned that on, I went, well, I don't have any other options. And I think a lot of times our decisions are based on, I don't have options. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to just try something. And that's one of the things that I always try to tell young people: try something new. It might be something that's really scary to you. Don't do anything that, is like ridiculous and dangerous, physically dangerous, but, things that are really outside of your comfort zone. Because I think had you not done that, where would you be today? Working some job that you don't really have a passion for, which right now I can tell. I mean, I've known you for a while, so I know that you're passionate about your job and your career, and helping people. So when you first look at success on the top, what is, a lot of people think, oh, that must mean money. I don't personally think success is always about money. It's about a lot of different things. So when you measure success, how does that look for you?
I think it varies. For me right now, believe it or not, even though I didn't like domestic things, I have moved into the domestic part of my life.
Good for you.
I have two small littles at home, a 4-year-old and a 7-month-old. So I think it depends on your season in life. Right now, for me, and I'm going to use a word that seems to be sometimes overused, this whole idea of balance, right? And being a good mom and still a good leader for my company, and finding that balance where not one or the other is overtaxing. And that's hard, right? If somebody can figure that out, that's like the $1 million idea, sort of the holy grail. And so right now in my season, for me, success is that balance. I don't do it well every day. It's a challenge every day. But I think for me, that's the most important thing. Having the ability to be my kid's mom, and also be the leader that my family of 18 and growing at JPW needs as well. And, that's part of why I started the company is I was having a really hard time finding, this was before I had children, finding balance and finding a space where I could still have a well-rounded personal life and still have a successful career. And quite frankly, I wasn't finding it anywhere out there. So I set out to create it for myself, knowing that children were hopefully on my horizon. And I also thought, certainly, I'm not the only woman or man that's trying to get this balance right. And so once we start growing, then we could be that space for people. And it's really cool to see that come to fruition in terms of, success on the work front. So my personal balance quest, if you will, is a way I measure success. But then another area is seeing how that's applying to some of the people that we have in our company, people that are new moms that are being promoted into director positions because they're killing it at work. They're doing an amazing job, but they're part-time, and they should be afforded every single opportunity to continue moving their career forward while they can still be available for their family. So that's a huge reward for me in this journey. And I know it's impacting a lot of people in our company who have chosen to, kind of find that balance through a reduced work schedule while still doing amazing work.
Well, you bring up a really important thing that I think now more than ever we're really paying attention to, and that is working from home.
Yes.
I think that's something that a lot of people thought, oh, that'll never happen. Well, look how quickly we adapted to that during the pandemic. I'm just kind of curious, when you think about, young moms, they want to stay home, they want to have a career, but then also balance that home. Do you think that there will be more teleworking or, working from home? How do you think that's going to be post-pandemic? Because I personally don't think we're not going to have another pandemic at some point in time. And I think, moving forward, we really have to adapt. And what do you think about all of that? I'm curious to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah. So I think, I always try and look for silver linings in things. And I think this very topic is one of the silver linings that has come out of the pandemic. And then it has blown up the idea that you have to be in your seat by 7:30 a.m. and stay there till 5:30 p.m. Frankly, I worked for a lot of government agencies where I saw that, but the productivity was very low, right? So being physically somewhere doesn't necessarily equate to productivity. And so for us, we have really just put it out to our team that you do what's best for you. We're not going to manage you by being here physically. You're welcome to once we open the offices back up. That's totally fine. But we also want to have this model where people can work from home. They can work early in the mornings or later in the evenings if they have, obligations with their kids or families. And it's really been embraced by our team. And quite frankly, I think it will be not really great for talent attraction if companies try and move away from that model. I was talking to a colleague who said, we're thinking of using working from home as an incentive for people going forward, that if they do a good job, they can work from home. What do you think about that? And from my perspective, I think if you have an employee who isn't performing, you have a performance issue. You don't have a location issue, right? So we're really trying to open up the vernacular of what this means for us. We have hired people that are outside of the region. It's helped us get some talent that we normally wouldn't have been able to land because they're not in San Diego County. It's also opened up doors in those markets for us. As I mentioned, expansions into the Pacific Northwest and Rocky Mountain region. So from our perspective, it's been really eye-opening and exciting to see how this model can change. Now, the flip side of that is how do we maintain our culture and how do we keep everybody trained up to the JPW way and keep our standards and quality, et cetera, in place. And so that we're really laser focused on as we move into this new era. But I really just don't see us going back like we were before. And how refreshing for people that need that flexibility.
Well, especially for, women, and they want to be a mom and have that job too and that career. I think it has opened so many possibilities that we never, ever considered. So I agree with you. I see it as a silver lining. There's, something you've got to try to figure out how you make something that is a terrible situation have something good come out of it.
Right.
Otherwise, you've lost hope. Yeah, right?
Absolutely.
It seems so negative, and I'm not into negativity, and I know you're not either.
No.
So I love that. And back to your whole talent, opening doors to new talent that you wouldn't normally have access to. I think that is a big part of what now is coming from COVID. And the people that want to work are going to be the ones at work.
Right.
And, I've heard a lot from, different types of businesses, not more what you're doing. But there are a lot of businesses that are really lacking in workforce because they can't retain or attract talent because people are actually getting paid to stay at home, which I think is the wrong message.
Right.
But I think, as we move out of this and we start to recover, and we're back in the yellow tier here in California, starting today, just being fully open, and what is that going to look like? I think there's going to be a lot of flexibility, and there's room for innovation. And how do we have some of these more physical jobs where you really do need to be on site? How do we be more flexible with that? I think we're going to come up with some ideas. I don't know what they're going to look like, but I think we definitely can have some opportunities there.
I agree. It is sort of exciting to think of some of these themes that we can take into this post-COVID world. I allowed an hour to drive to the studio today from my home in Carlsbad. It took me 25 minutes. There was nobody on the road. I mean, think of the impacts of traffic just in this new era. I'm going to miss when that's no longer the case, but are there impacts there that we could realize that would benefit our commute times, our climate, the environment, etc. So you're right. It's going to be exciting to see how we sort of uncover some of these issues moving forward.
Well, and workforce staggering start times and all of that. I think you're onto something, because I often think about all these sorts of things, because I'm always thinking, I'm an electric car driver. I think about how can I reduce my carbon footprint? How can I do that? And there are so many different things, but it's going to be really us working together and, figuring out all of this together post-pandemic and how that looks. But let's get back to you and role models and, inspiration. Are there any role models that really set you on the path to believe that you could do the things that you've done? Like, going off to a city where no one, that kind of thing.
Well, this is probably a simple answer, but it's a truthful answer. I would say my parents. When I graduated with my master's degree, I gave a little speech, and I said, if I had told my parents that I wanted to be in the circus, they would have said, you are going to be the best tightrope walker, or, I don't know what some of the other jobs in a circus are, but, they just encouraged me in every single thing that I did. And I always joke and say, I didn't go into the circus, but I went into government and politics. So it's sort of similar.
I was going to say, isn't that the same?
But, having that encouragement, and I try and model that to our employees as well, that you really can do anything that you set your mind to. So that was, encouragement that I received very early on. And to this day, quite frankly, I call my parents, my board of directors. I don't have a board of directors for JPW, but if I did, they are still a wonderful sounding board and really encouraging of my aspirations. And then early on in my career, my first city job, I literally walked into City Hall in a new town where I didn't know anybody, and asked if anybody at City Hall did PR. And they took my name and number, and I thought, I'll never hear back. And somebody called me, my very first boss, Barbara LaFada, and we talked about PR and what it looks like to do PR in a community setting. And a few months later, she had a position open, and she ended up hiring me. I went through the recruitment process, but I came out the top candidate there. And it was really a special time in my life to have somebody who guided me through all this newness of my very first job, and of working from City Hall in a high-profile position. And she was really great. She was a teacher actually prior to coming into this role several years before she came into that role. But that particular talent of hers really came through as she coached and guided me in my very first job. So I think a combination of those individuals really had a huge impact on me, and I really hope to pay that forward.
I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah.
I love that. I think a lot of times there are so many people that are very talented out there that don't have anyone that believes in them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exactly what I was thinking. I hope you pay that forward
do,
because
yeah.
mentoring and, just describing your journey and how, nothing's smooth.
Mm-mm.
I have many young people telling me, oh, gosh, how did you get to where you are? Oh, well, through a lot of trial and error, through a lot of pain and agony,
Mm-hmm.
and through a lot of just basically screwing things up.
Mm-hmm. And that's okay to do, right?
Exactly, yes. But I don't think that everyone wants to admit that. A lot of people think, oh, that journey just seems like it just fell into your lap. Nothing falls into someone's lap. I mean, I don't think I've met one person that is doing something amazing that they just walked in and they got this dream job.
Right. And quite frankly, I wonder if that person, if they would appreciate it like somebody who has really gone through the trials and tribulations appreciates it, right?
Right. Well, because it helps mold you and it makes you more resilient.
Mm-hmm.
So when things come into your life that are unexpected, well, like, a pandemic or something like that you are like, oh, yeah, that's a bummer, but I've been through worse, or I've been through equally difficult, or I've been through all of these other things that have helped shape me so that I can get through this. I think strength, definitely, you're not born with it.
Mm-mm.
It's definitely something that you have to go through tough things to get there. And so I want our listeners to hear that and really believe that.
Yeah.
No,
I was
go
just
ahead.
going to say, one of the best pieces of advice that I got, and I didn't get it until I started the business, but it would have been nice to have had years and years prior to that. But one of the best pieces of advice somebody told me was, do it scared. Do it scared, because it's not going to go away, that scary feeling of starting your own business or hiring, more and more people and expanding your company. There's always going to be a little bit of unsettledness, and just do it anyway. And I'm so glad I heard that. That was really encouraging to me. And so, if there are young listeners out there that are thinking about doing something that maybe is a bit audacious, I say do it scared.
That is so good. I whenever I'm talking to young people, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, high schoolers, I always say, try something that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Try something that you don't think that you are going to be able to do because it's outside of your comfort zone, because sometimes you realize that is really what you're meant to do. I think I've told you this before. Public speaking, definitely on no one's list. No one goes, yeah. I've had one person say to me, oh yeah, I have no problem with public speaking. I looked at him and I'm thinking, yeah, sure.
Was it Tony Robbins?
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, I think that is one of the most feared things to do in life is public speaking, and trying something that you don't feel like you can really do. You're not equipped to do it. But many times, and I hear this again and again from leaders, they've tried things. They say, yep, I did it fearfully, but it ended up at the end being the best choice that I ever made. And now I'm doing something that I really love, or now I'm doing something that I really feel passionate about, and I'm happier. Because you can't be happy if you're not, trying something that you're, outside your comfort zone that you really find that you're passionate about. The passion and the happiness, I think, go together.
I totally agree.
So moving forward, what does your journey look like? What are your next plans? I'm really excited to hear about that. Tell us a little bit more about your expansion plans.
Yeah, so we've, we have some strategic contacts in those two markets that we really felt like now was the time to
Can you tell us the cities
activate.
Or not quite yet?
Well, yeah, we'll be based out of Seattle in the Pacific Northwest and Denver in the Rocky Mountain region.
That's what I assumed, but I wanted you to say
Yeah.
it.
So we've hired extremely talented individual in Denver. She's come to us from Denver International Airport and will be heading up new business development in that region, as well as handling some clients for the company as well. And then we have an exceptional, talented individual in the Pacific Northwest who's actually has San Diego roots, and that's how we know her. But she's now living up in the Seattle area on Bainbridge Island, to be exact, and will be putting our roots down in that neck of the woods for us, which is exciting for me because I'm from the Northwest. And so to think about going up there and doing business is really a lot of fun. So those are our, we're really focused on those two markets right now, and are excited to see what comes of it.
You're going home.
I know.
That's wonderful.
I know.
You can stretch out to businesses that you or municipalities that you've already been connected to. That's really neat.
It's really neat. And, we were talking before the podcast about it being such a small world and the importance of networking. And that's probably a whole podcast in itself. And I didn't realize that until later in my life either, how important that networking is. But it's such a small world. One of our clients here in San Diego is now a city manager in the very town that our new director in the Seattle region is based out of. So, and they happen to know mutual individuals. So they've already set up coffee. It's really cool to see how that network kind of comes to life when you start to activate it. So, like I said, we're really excited to see how this flourishes.
That's wonderful. And it does. It is all networking. So going back to advice for young women, the next generation of leaders, what would be the advice that you would give them?
I talked about doing it scared, but I also think I would say have confidence in yourself. Don't second guess that confidence. Don't be afraid to ask questions, especially if you don't know something. That's, I think for me now on sort of the other side of the hump of my career, I wish I had done more of. Really ask questions, because now as a senior team member, I really value that in our younger team members when they do ask questions and don't pretend to know everything, because I know that they don't know everything. I'm not going to say that to them, but right, it shows this thirst for learning and a humility that's really attractive to me as an individual, and it makes them a better employee. So I would say, in addition to just being audacious, doing it scared, don't be afraid to ask questions and have confidence in your ability. Even if you don't know an answer to something, that doesn't mean that you aren't totally capable of doing something. So that's maybe the Jenny Windle combination for success there, those 4 ingredients.
Well, and we're always going to have our own style too. And not to measure ourselves, I think, to others,
Absolutely.
Going back to the confidence, it's really easy to get wrapped up in that, I'm not like that person and I'm not like that person. But truthfully, we are individual and we can all do well with our own style. It doesn't have to be the same as someone else. And I think as women, we probably tend to do that a little bit more than men. We're always saying, okay, what about her? She's more talented. Oh, what about her? She's more intelligent. There's always going to be someone that's more something.
Right.
So thank you so much for coming today. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your journey, sharing it with us. And I'm so excited to see what your next step is and to watch you grow and, just continue to be successful and your sons to grow up and balancing it all. And we all fall short. We all feel like we fall short. But guess what? You're doing your way. You're doing it your way. And that's enough. And that's enough. So always remember that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Now that was powerful. We hope you've been lifted and encouraged by today's inspiring voice. Always remember that life doesn't look exactly the same for each one of us. Never stop dreaming, striving, and thriving. In future episodes, we look forward to bringing you powerful stories from amazing women who learn how to lead in to challenges. Thank you for listening and being part of our community with CEO host Rebecca Jones.
You have been listening to a Cloudcast original. Local stories, local storytellers, local brands. Find more stories at cloudcast.us.